Thank you for attending this Best Practices webinar for implementing Weekly Writer into your classroom. Weekly Writer prepares students to write across the curriculum through consistency and continuity. My name is Darren Butler, and I am the gentleman that you see in the instructional videos during each of the lessons. I've been a writing specialist for more than 15 years, and I'm also an author. These are some of the books that I've published, including the Abbey Girl Spy series, which includes 4 titles, a young adult novel called A Whistle in the Night, and Excuse Me, There's a Monster in My Closet, a picture book for young readers. I also have a book called Rip and Write, Integrating Reading Comprehension and Writing, which is a free gift to all of you as subscribers. If you are interested in purchasing books for your classroom, either a classroom set of one of the titles for a class read, like a one book, one school situation, or if you want to order one copy each for your classroom or your library, you can do that from our Seacoast sister company's site. Before we begin, I'd like you to think about this question. Why is teaching and implementing writing difficult in the classroom? So what do you think? What are your thoughts about that? When I do these webinars and speak to teachers across the country, I get statements like this. I don't have time to teach writing. It's too difficult to grade. I don't feel like I'm a good writer. How can I teach my students? Well, those are great questions and they're great concerns. What we believe with the Weekly Writer is that we can talk about time allotment because keep in mind, Weekly Writer is not a curriculum. There is no script. There is no clock running. Weekly Writer is a writing resource to help you enhance what you already do very well in your classroom. Throughout the year, through professional development and our teacher's guide, we will talk about easier ways to grade student writing that is more effective and also will yield the data that you need to work with your students for intervention. And we will help you feel more comfortable teaching writing. In a poll that we conducted, 82% of teachers across the country said they felt uncomfortable teaching writing or there was some kind of mystery behind the process. We want to take that mystery out and help you to feel more comfortable. And that's where we believe that Weekly Writer provides you with incredible job-embedded professional development each and every time you use the program. Before we begin, I want to talk about a few things that will just help you in preparing to use the product. Number one, I think you should bookmark our website at www.weekly-writer.com. Now the URL will possibly change to vvclassroom.com, which stands for Virtual Village Classroom. That is our mother company. Weekly Writer is our product. It's important to write down your login and password. However, if you lose that, it's very easy to retrieve that. We prescribe that students have 2 3-ring binders, approximately 1 inch in width. This is so you can build a writer's portfolio. Stephen Covey says, begin with the end in mind. It's my favorite habit of his 7 habits for highly effective people. If we think about the end of the school year, we can collect writing throughout the year, and it gives a chance for your students to present, doesn't it? And say, here's what I present, here's what I publish into my portfolio. You as the classroom teacher, you are the publisher and the editor of your classroom, and you help to decide what goes inside that portfolio. You're gathering work that children have done so that you can showcase their work, but also talk about their journey from the beginning of the school year to the end of the school year. It'll help you point out their weaknesses as well as their strengths. The Writer's Workbook, so that's a place to keep the daily writing. It's also a place to keep tools. For example, in our download from our teacher resource page, you can gather all kinds of printables that you can put in the workbook to help remind students of the different skills in descriptive, in narrative, in explanatory, in opinion and argumentative writing. Now, let's take a tour of our website. All right, so we're going to just go to that real quick and bring that into view. When you're in our website, you click on Subscriber Login. Okay, so once you do that, that's going to take you to a login page. Now, I'm going to put in my username and my password. If you click on Remember Me, that will keep you in the system, and that'll help you just as you're logging in for ease. Okay, click Login. And once you log in, it's going to look like you have gone back to where you were. However, this My Subscriptions tab was not there before, and this is your portal that allows you to get behind the veil to the dashboard for Weekly Writer. So under My Subscriptions, I like to refer to it as your dashboard. Here is the Seacoast site. If you click here on this button, it will take you to the Seacoast Publishing site, our sister company, where you'll find some great nonfiction biographies. Okay, you'll also find my books as well. Now, the biographies are great because if you're really trying to celebrate nonfiction inside your classroom to meet standards, this is a great way to learn about great Americans. Now, this is focused on Alabamians, but keep in mind, Alabama produced a lot of great Americans, including Harper Lee, Jesse Owens, Henry Aaron, Julia Tutwiler, George Wallace, Sam Dale, and a slew of others. We have books on African Americans, Native American Indians, politicians, musicians, artists, athletes, you name it. Amazing biographies that are written on a 4th grade to 7th grade reading range. And I think that's a great way to celebrate nonfiction reading in your classroom. Under RIP, this is a way to help your students understand, read, interpret, predict. Now, RIP is my close reading strategy. So if you are an early childhood teacher, then you have this video, which also introduces our little guy here, RIP. And we were very fortunate to have a Sesame Street puppeteer to come in and puppet this puppet for our K1 and 2 boys and girls. And he explains the RIP strategy as well. There's an elementary video for elementary students and a junior high video for junior high students explaining how this close reading strategy can help your students to be more successful at reading comprehension. Under dynamic lessons, you will find a weekly lesson either for you or for your students. So our program is not seasonal. We don't have lessons about the seasons of the year or holidays or days of observance because we never know when a teacher is going to start using our program. They may start in August or September or October or even January or February. The dynamic lessons are my way to communicate with you on a weekly basis. So it might be brain teasers. For example, here we are suggesting ways to build critical thinking skills inside of your classroom. And I give you an activity to do with all grades that will really help you to build logical and creative responses. On the other hand, it could be just information for you. Things to talk about what Weekly Writer is. Things to talk about holidays. Things to talk about current events, breaking news, or anything that can be helpful for your classroom in teaching a current events dynamic writing lesson. Under your teacher resource page, you're going to find your scope and sequence for the school year. You're going to find your writer's portfolio, and you're going to find your workbook pages. So for example, if I'm a 3rd grade teacher and I want to put pages into my students' workbooks, I simply click on the 3rd grade link, and that'll bring up a PDF, and you can see as you scroll through, these are great pages to have to put in your workbook to help your children understand about writing descriptive or narrative or explanatory, informative, persuasive, opinion, argumentative. It's just great resources that coincide with our lessons in Weekly Writer. Many, many resources for you as well as for your students. All right, so keep in mind that's where that's located. Here under Teacher Resources, you will also find your scope and your sequence. Now, for the majority of the country, we have the Common Core Alignment or the College and Career Readiness Standards. If you are a Texas subscriber, keep in mind that under the subscriber resource page, you're going to see this pop up here. That's not quite in there yet. That's being edited at the moment. And we'll put that here. It'll say Texas, T-E-K-S, text alignment, and you'll have the same type of links here, but it'll show you a standards alignment just for Texas. If I'm looking at 5th grade, I'm going to go through and pull that up, and we can look at a 5th grade scope and sequence just as an example. You can see that for each week you have your 5 components of Weekly Writer, what's going on inside that week in that particular area, and then here is your standards alignment. And we have all these codings here to help you keep track of what standards are being addressed in the lesson. For any of our reading passages, we have the ATOS text complexity levels as well. Now, there's a teacher edition and a student edition of Weekly Writer. Let's take a look at the teacher edition. So I'm going to click on grade, and then I can choose my grade level. And I keep in mind, every subscriber has access to every grade level. So you can use it for intervention as well as enrichment to challenge students who are working above grade level. I'm going to pick just in the middle here with 4th grade, okay? And here's all 36 weeks of instruction. So you can use your scope and sequence to either do this in the sequence that we have, or if you want to be flexible with this and you want to say, hey, you know what? I really like how this is laid out, but at our school, our instructional roadmap says that we've got to teach narrative over this time period. I'm going to be done with narrative. That's fine. So you can go through and look at all the narrative lessons on your scope and sequence and use those weeks to coincide with your blocks here to pull those lessons. The same thing for rip and write, for source writing, for conventions and application. You can make this flexible to fit into your instructional roadmap, and that's okay. If I'm looking just here at week 1, I click on that box and week 1 appears. Now, this is the teacher edition, okay? So I have my 5 components here. These are hot links that will take me right to that page. I can use the index, okay, and pick a page and go to it. This is my return back to home button. Or I can simply grab the corner and turn the page like a book, or use the arrows. Any of those ways will help you guide yourself through Weekly Writer. I'm going to use the hot link and go straight to Let's Write. This is my student page here. If I click on this, it will expand. Now, right now, I am in the standard view, okay? So I'm going to back out and show you a little trick here. If I go back to the beginning of the week and I click on this button, it's going to make everything a lot bigger. Now let me make my view for you bigger too, because if you can see, we've kind of not fit the whole thing. But when I go over here to Let's Write and I click, it puts everything inside a much larger frame for you. If you don't click on that yellow bar here, then what's going to happen is when you click in and zoom on a page, you got to scroll left and right. So it's really great if you're on an interactive whiteboard to use that feature to zoom in and make everything big on your screen. Here you have your student page, here you have your teacher page. In your Let's Write lesson, we introduce the lesson here. This box brings up your video, including me modeling the process for your students. Following the video, you have a summary, and then you have the Your Turn. So this is the instructions for what the children are going to work on the next several days. So people ask me, how would you use the videos in the classroom? This gets back to time management. The way I designed the product, of course, was for us to have the video on like a Monday or the beginning of the week lesson, and to show that 12 to 14 minute video in its entirety. However, that might not be the best practice for you. Many teachers tell me they show a portion of the video on Monday, another portion on Tuesday, another portion on Wednesday. They spread it out over 2 or 3 days. And when they pause the video, they step in and they model with their students face to face. And I think that's a great practice. I think it's a wonderful practice for creating very strong collaboration between myself as a virtual author in residence and you as the classroom teacher. It also gives your children not only the virtual author in residence experience, but it gives you, the classroom teacher, that face-to-face connection with your students to be their constant cheerleader as they build their writing. Now, in the video, and I'm just going to punch in, we're going to do just a little bit of this, and when we do that, the video is going to pop up. So we have an introduction, and in the introduction,
we use our senses and emotions to brainstorm ideas. Then emotions, like
here in this portion, this is the brainstorming where I use the Lightboard room. As we do that, I will use many graphic organizers during this to help you bring ideas to the table. We will use my questioning technique, we will use bullets, we will use Venn diagrams, T-charts, webs, you name it, whatever it takes to get children to brainstorm both logically and creatively. Then we go into the planning.
he's sitting.
Here I take the brainstorming and bring it into a plan. Now during my plan, I exclusively use bullets. In my research over 15 plus years, I have discovered that bullets are the most successful way to teach children to plan, because the bullets will eventually move into more of a traditional outline. With bullets, children can pick from their brainstorming and make sure that what they're going to talk about in their paragraph or their essay matches their topic. To build organization and sentence fluency, I can go back and number my bullets, and then that will help me on the tail end of this to build that organization and sentence fluency inside the actual writings. It gives the children a map to follow. During the writing portion, the students have watched me go through and write sentence by sentence, and I talk about sentences, I build them in the air, I stretch them, I insert better word choice. And then in the end, they watch me go through and revise and edit. You can see here where I'm changing capitalization. It could be spelling, it could be subject-verb agreement, it could be commas, any of our skills that we need to reinforce what our children are doing in their actual writing. And I talk about the skills, whether it's grammar, punctuation, or spelling, to make sure they understand what we're doing and why we're making the change. Now, the video is a great way for your students to learn about the process. And remember, modeling is the key. Modeling is the key to student success in writing. They need to see me model. They need to see you model. They need to see your colleagues model. They can even model for each other if you have an exceptional young writer in your classroom. Over here we have the rubric, so you can see as well as your children can see. You could show them this page, what's below standards, what meets standards, and what exceeds standards. This can be done before they write or after they write to compare their writing to an example. Click is my way of talking about things that connect from student writing into the real world and across the curriculum. Oprah Winfrey calls them aha moments. Steve Jobs called them connecting the dots. I call them clicks. Conventions is a spotlight on grammar. Now, we're not trying to replace your grammar curriculum. We want to put a spotlight on a grammar or punctuation concept. And then we do a checking for understanding page that you could use on your interactive whiteboard just to make sure it was on the same page. This could be a quiz you had that. It could be a worksheet. That's completely up to you, but it could be done on that whiteboard interactively as a class, whole group, small group. It could be printed out using the print button here. Okay? You can print out just this page and let them do it in class or for homework. You're just trying to literally do what the title says, check for understanding, because you want to then infuse this skill into their actual writing during the week. What we do in Weekly Writer, but what you do in your other classes and content areas. Application is a mini lesson. So narrative is one of the hardest modes of writing. So how do we prepare to write narrative? Well, first of all, we want to describe great characters and places, and which can become settings and objects and things and events. So in descriptive, we cover a lot of that in minute detail. Then we enhance our narrative with that descriptive writing, which is what standards wants us to do. It also helps our explanatory informative writing and our opinion persuasive argumentative writing as well. So in this case, they're going to create a character using this character worksheet, okay? But in this lesson, they have to also observe this character. They have to use those foundational skills from the very beginning of the week in Let's Write to describe this character, to point out their strengths, their weaknesses. It's a very important skill. I suggest with the character worksheet, keeping a pile of these in your classroom and let kids fill them out because you want to build multiple characters throughout the year that give children something to write about in their narratives. So RIP stands for Read, Interpret, Predict. Throughout the program, we give you these passages in math, in science, in fiction or poetry, and social science, including geography, history, or community. We give you opportunities to model close reading. We're not trying to replace your reading series or the literature you're doing in your classroom, but you can use these exercises to model close reading. Boys and girls, here's how you read to comprehend in a math word problem. Here's how you read to comprehend a science passage. Here's how you read to comprehend a piece of fiction or poetry. Here's how you read to comprehend something in social studies. Because every content area needs something different as a result when you start answering questions. We don't read a math word problem the same as we read a piece of poetry. It's different types of reading comprehension. And we need to prepare our students for that. If we're going to change the mindset of our children, that reading comprehension and writing are not just limited to language arts. They are part of every content area in what our children do, and it really prepares them with great literacy, not only across the curriculum, but for real life. So in this RIP passage, we taught the students about how you read. You read one sentence at a time. You observe punctuation. You picture it in your mind. And above all, whether you're reading out loud or you're reading in your mind, you must read with expression. If children are reading like a zombie robot, the brain is going to turn off and disengage in the comprehension. You have to read with expression, like an Academy Award-winning actor, and that takes practice. That's where you've got to intervene and really help them to do that. Then we want them to stop and ask questions. We want them to interpret. We want them to predict. We want to pull from our anchor standards to really dig deeper, not only just the key ideas, but also things that delve into craft and structure and to our integration of knowledge and ideas. Then we have open-ended questions where the students will answer about basic information. If it's a math word problem, for example, they're going to have to build the math sentence, answer the problem, and then explain how they found their answer. And of course, in science or in social studies or fiction or poetry, these types of questions will vary, just so we're asking them to explain, to inform, to give an opinion, to analyze, okay? And it may even be they have to compare or contrast or write in the same style and voice to answer a question. Source writing brings everything together because in source writing, you're going to read multiple sources or experience multiple sources because the sources could be a website, it could be an audio, it could be a video, it could be a combination. And students have to read, interpret, predict the text. And then they have to go through and make notes. They have to be prepared to paraphrase, to summarize, to analyze. Because when they answer the open-ended questions about the passages, they're going to use their foundational skills of describing, giving an opinion, informing, explaining, persuading, arguing, or even telling a story if that's part of the questioning. In this case, in this very early lesson, we're teaching them how to compare and contrast. They're just making a bullet list of what's alike and what's different about the two passages. But then they have to go back to what we learned at the beginning of the week and write 2 descriptive sentences to follow up this passage, A House in the Trees. All right. Those are our components in Weekly Writer. And you can see in the Teacher's Edition, we have all kinds of communication to provide great professional development to you as you use our program. Now I want to jump over to the Student Edition as well, because in the Student Edition, of course, we'll do the exact same week, grade 4, week 1. In this edition, you can see the answer keys are gone. I'm just going to flip through, and you can see how this looks for your students when you put it on an interactive whiteboard. Okay? Very simple. But one of the great features of our program is our Flip app. Let's say, for example, you have students that are absent that need to make up work. Maybe you have students that need intervention. You need to pull from a lower grade level or let them do a lesson again. Maybe you want to flip your classroom, either in your classroom at a center activity or a computer lab, or you want to send some really awesome virtual, internet type activities for homework at home. Our Flip app is your answer. You simply click on this Flip app here, and it brings up the generator. You pick the pages you want them to have access to. So let's say, for example, I want them to see page 2, the beginning of the Let's Write lesson, and then I want that to end. Here's the rest of Let's Write, here's conventions, here's the last page of conventions, where we had that checking for understanding page, remember? I'm going to click on that. So they get access from pages 2 through 5. They have access from, let's just say today, which is September the 4th, through Tuesday, September the 8th. Okay? When I click this code, this generate flip access code, it gives me this unique 10 to 20 digit code. I'm going to copy that to my clipboard, which means then I can paste it onto a teacher web page. I could do it into an email going home, a text alert going home. I could then even put it on a handout going home. And students can insert this code into the Flip app. Now let's take a look at that. If you're using a desktop or a laptop, you simply click on VV Flip from any computer, desktop or laptop, as long as it has the internet. You go to our website, you bring that up, and you're going to insert that code. Now, this works the same if you're on a tablet, okay? If you're on an iPad, for example, you can download our virtual Flip app. If you're on a Google Chromebook, you would need to use this VV Flip app widget that we have on our website. When I click Start Reading, it's going to bring up just those pages I selected. You see? And now the students are not roaming through a 10,000 page product. You decide what they have access to so that they're not roaming around. They stay focused on the lesson you have at hand. All right, and that's a great way to literally slice and dice our publication. All right, now we're really excited with the Flip app and what that can do to really help you in teaching Weekly Writer and implementing that at your school. Now, I want to move on and talk about a few more little things here. All the lessons are designed for whole group, but they are wonderful for small group and individualized instruction, whether in that traditional or that flipped classroom setting. A few reminders: we have a scope and sequence for all 36 weeks of instruction. Now the last 4 weeks, weeks 33 through 36, those are test prep. So if you are administering your standardized test, let's say the 1st of May, you could go pull from those in April to do some timed writing assessments, especially for grades 3rd through 8th. In grades K1, 2, you're going to find more portfolio prep for those last few weeks. Now, all the lessons are flexible to work within any classroom. They infuse writing across the curriculum as you saw. All the lessons are aligned to Common Core, but we're not Common Core dependent. We didn't build a Common Core product. We built a great writing program, and then we aligned it to Common Core standards. We aligned it to the College and Career Readiness standards, and for our friends in Texas, we aligned it to the TEKS, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, the TEKS standards, because we want to provide those standards for you wherever you are so that you can see what you are addressing in each of our lessons. Now, I'm sure that you're going to have questions following this particular webinar. I want you to feel free to email me, and that's my personal email address, darren@vvclassroom.com. Please don't hesitate. When we called our company Virtual Village, we weren't trying to be cheesy or corny. We literally believe it takes a village to educate a child. And when you subscribe to Weekly Writer, we're not leaving you high and dry to go use our product on your own and figure it out. We want to stay connected to you. Email us with great things going on in your classroom. I get email every week from teachers who are excited about what their kids are writing, and they share that with me. And sometimes people have questions about lessons. I want to answer those for you. Email me. If I can't answer your question in an email or a phone call, We'll jump on a webinar together and I'll show you. If you have technical questions or things about your subscription you have questions about, please email at info@vvclassroom.com and one of our customer service reps will get to you as quickly as possible. Now, if you have other questions, email info or Darren at VV Classroom. We'll be glad to help you in any way possible. But we want you to know that we appreciate you and you putting Weekly Writer into your classroom each week. We want to work with you as a collaborative effort to enhance literacy in your school, in your community, and in our great country. Thank you so much for joining this Best Practices Implementation webinar for Weekly Writer.